Welcome to Riddle Paradox. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This video contains discussions of sensitive and disturbing topics, including violence, death, and real-life tragedies that may be upsetting. All content is for educational and entertainment purposes only, based on publicly available information. We honor the victims and their families and do not condone or glorify any form of violence.
In the scorched heart of Arizona's Superstition Mountains, where jagged peaks clawed at the relentless sun like the fingers of a dying giant, a lone figure staggered through the dust-choked canyons. It was 1891, and Adolph Ruth, a wide-eyed treasure seeker from the east, had ventured too far into the labyrinth of red rock and thorny scrub. His lips cracked and bleeding, he collapsed beside a dry wash, clutching a faded map that promised untold riches. As vultures circled overhead, their shadows dancing like omens on the parched earth, Ruth whispered to the wind, "The Dutchman's gold. It's here. But the mountains, they guard it with blood." He never rose again, his body discovered weeks later, skull shattered by bullets. The map vanished. This was no isolated tragedy. It was the latest verse in a saga that had lured men to their doom for decades. At the center of it all stood Jacob Waltz, the enigmatic German immigrant known as the Dutchman, whose whispered tales of a hidden gold mine had ignited a fever that consumed souls like wildfire. But to understand the curse that clung to those forsaken peaks, one must journey back to the turbulent 1800s, when the American West was a cauldron of dreams and desperation, and a man from across the ocean carried a secret that would outlive him. Jacob Waltz was born Jacob Waltz in 1810, in the shadowed valleys of Württemberg, Germany, a land of fairy tales and feudal hardships. He grew up amid the echoes of Napoleonic wars, where poverty gnawed at families like his, farmers scraping by on meager soil. By his 20s, the lure of the New World beckoned, tales of boundless opportunity filtering across the Atlantic like golden mirages. In 1845, at the age of 35, Waltz boarded a creaking ship bound for America, leaving behind the old world's chains for the promise of reinvention. He arrived in New York Harbor, a sturdy man with piercing blue eyes and a thick accent that marked him as an outsider. The gold rush fever was already simmering. News of strikes in California had turned men's hearts to greed. Waltz drifted westward, working odd jobs, mining coal in Pennsylvania, laboring on railroads through the Midwest, each step hardening him against the raw brutality of frontier life. By the 1860s, he had reached the Arizona Territory, a lawless expanse where Apache warriors roamed and outlaws carved empires from the dust. Phoenix was little more than a dusty outpost then, a cluster of adobe shacks huddled against the Sonoran Desert's wrath. Waltz settled there, taking up prospecting, his hands calloused from swinging picks into unyielding rock. He was no fool, he knew the odds. But in those mountains, something ancient stirred, a whisper of fortune that would bind his fate to the land forever. The Superstition Mountains loomed on the horizon like a fortress of secrets, their craggy spires rising over 6,000 feet, veined with canyons that twisted like serpents. Named by Spanish explorers who deemed them cursed, the range was steeped in lore. Tales of Peralta miners slaughtered by Apaches in the 1840s, their gold-laden mules vanishing into the mists. Waltz heard these stories in saloons where grizzled prospectors nursed whiskey and spun yarns of hidden veins richer than Croesus's vaults. He prospected alone, his mule laden with supplies, venturing deeper than most dared. The air grew thin and treacherous, riddled with flash floods, venomous scorpions, and the ever-present threat of Apache raids. It was in 1870, amid this unforgiving wilderness, that Waltz's life veered into legend. One sweltering afternoon, as thunderheads gathered, like conspirators, he stumbled upon a narrow cleft in the rock, concealed by mesquite and saguaro. Hacking through the underbrush, he uncovered an old shaft, its entrance weathered by time. Inside, the walls gleamed with quartz laced in gold, pure, unrefined ore that sparkled like captured sunlight. His heart pounded. This was no mere placer, deposit. It was a lode, a mother vein, hidden from the world. Waltz extracted samples, his mind racing with visions of wealth. But as he emerged, a chill wind swept through the canyon, carrying the distant howl of coyotes. He knew then, This mine was not just a discovery, it was a burden. Waltz returned to Phoenix with pockets heavy, but his lips sealed tighter than a miser's purse. He sold nuggets discreetly, enough to buy a small farm on the outskirts of town, where he lived modestly, tending chickens and growing vegetables in the arid soil. Whispers spread like desert winds. The Dutchman had struck it rich, yet he never flaunted it. Neighbors saw him vanish into the mountains for weeks, returning with saddlebags that clinked suspiciously. "He's got a mine up there," they'd murmur. In the general store, eyes gleaming with envy. Gold enough to buy half of Arizona. But Waltz guarded his secret fiercely, his German pragmatism tempered by the paranoia of a man who'd seen too many betrayals. Immigrants like him were often preyed upon, swindled by claim jumpers or robbed by bandits. He trusted no one, not even the few friends he made, like Julia Thomas, a kind-hearted baker who occasionally mended his clothes. In quiet evenings by his hearth, Waltz would stare into the flames, the weight of his discovery pressing on him like the mountains themselves. The gold was a double-edged sword. It promised freedom from poverty, yet it chained him to solitude. He mined sporadically, extracting just enough to sustain himself, always watching his back trail for shadows. The superstitions were no ordinary range. They pulsed with an aura of menace that seeped into the bones. Apache legends spoke of the Yuff, thunder god guarding sacred grounds, cursing intruders with madness or death. White settlers dismissed it as superstition, but the bodies told another tale. In 1872, a party of prospectors led by a man named Weaver ventured in, drawn by rumors of Waltz's fortune. They never returned. Their bleached bones were found scattered in a ravine, arrows embedded in skulls. Waltz heard the news in town, his face impassive, but inside, a storm brewed. He knew the dangers firsthand. Once, while hauling ore, a sudden rockslide had nearly buried him alive, the earth groaning as if alive. Another time, he evaded a band of outlaws by hiding in a crevice, his breath shallow as they passed within arm's reach. These brushes with death only deepened his resolve to keep the mine hidden. "The mountains take what they want," he'd mutter, to himself in his thick accent, polishing a nugget that gleamed like a forbidden star. Yet the allure grew. By the late 1870s, tales of the Dutchman's gold had filtered eastward, drawing a new breed of dreamers. Civil War veterans haunted by loss, immigrants fleeing famine, all chasing the American promise in its rawest form. One such seeker was Elias Dutch Schultz, a burly miner from Missouri who befriended Waltz in a Phoenix saloon. Over pints of ale, Schultz pressed for details, his eyes hungry. "Come on, Jacob, we're both outsiders here. Share the wealth." Waltz's gaze hardened, a flicker of suspicion crossing his weathered face. He revealed nothing, but Schultz persisted, trailing him on one expedition. High in the canyons, as dusk painted the rocks blood red, Schultz confronted him. "I know you've got it hidden. Show me or I'll find it myself." Waltz's hand hovered near his revolver, the tension thick as the gathering night. In that moment, the Dutchman could have ended it, but mercy, or perhaps cunning, stayed his trigger. Schultz vanished soon after, rumored to have perished in a flash flood, his body never found. The incident fueled the myth. The mine wasn't just rich, it was cursed, claiming those who sought it unworthily. Waltz retreated further into isolation, his farm a fortress of silence. But the whispers persisted, a siren call echoing through the saloons and mining camps, pulling more souls into the vortex. As the 1880s dawned, the gold rush era waned, but the superstition's pull intensified. Railroads snaked across the territory, bringing waves of fortune hunters who clustered in boom towns like Apache Junction. Waltz, now in his 70s, moved with the deliberate caution of a man who'd outrun death too many times. His body bore the scars, a limp from a cave-in, eyes clouded by years of glaring sun. Yet he continued his treks, the mine's location etched only in his mind. No maps, no markers, just the jagged landmarks of Weaver's needle, a spire that pierced the sky like an accusatory finger. He extracted ore in secret, smuggling it out, under cover of night, selling to trusted assayers who asked no questions. The gold was pure, flecked with quartz that spoke of a vein untouched by modern machinery. In town, he'd buy supplies, flour, ammunition, a bottle of schnapps, his transactions brief, his demeanor gruff. But beneath it, raw emotion simmered. The immigrant's dream realized, tainted by loneliness. Waltz had no family in America. Letters to Germany had long ceased. The mine was his legacy, his curse, a golden chain binding him to the land that had both blessed and broken him. Danger lurked in every shadow. The Apaches, displaced by encroaching settlers, viewed the mountains as sacred, their warriors ghosts in the mist. In 1884, a group of miners, emboldened by liquor-fueled bravado, set out to shadow Waltz. Led by a sharp-tongued Texan named Rhodes, they tracked him to a narrow pass. As lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the rugged terrain, they ambushed him. "Hand over the map, Dutchman," Rhodes snarled, rifle raised. Waltz, cornered like a wolf, fired back, the shot echoing through the canyons. Chaos erupted. Bullets ricocheted off rocks. Men screamed as they tumbled into abysses. Waltz escaped, wounded but alive, dragging himself back to his farm. Rhodes's party? Scattered remains found months later, attributed to mountain fever or Apache retribution. The incident amplified the curse's lore. Those who pursued the Dutchman's gold invited doom. Waltz confided in no one, but Julia Thomas, sensing his turmoil, offered quiet companionship. "Jacob, why not share it? The burden's killing you," she'd say, her voice soft amid the creak of his rocking chair. He'd shake his head, eyes distant. "It's not for sharing. The mountains decide." The human drama unfolded in ripples. Families torn apart by the legend, husbands vanishing into the peaks, leaving wives to wither in poverty, sons inheriting maps drawn from hearsay only to meet grisly ends. One tale spoke of the Hyam brothers, English immigrants who arrived in 1886, their faces alight with hope. They befriended locals, piecing together clues from barroom gossip. "We've got a lead on the Dutchman's trail," they'd boast. Venturing. In they encountered the mountain's wrath, a sudden storm that turned trails to torrents, sweeping one brother away. The survivor emerged raving, "The gold's alive. It whispers." He died soon after, feverish and broken. Such stories wove into the fabric of the West, blending fact with myth, each tragedy heightening the suspense. Waltz watched from afar, his secret intact, but the emotional toll mounted. In quiet moments, he'd finger a nugget, remembering the thrill of discovery, the rush of cool air from the shaft, the gleam that promised redemption. Yet now it felt like a pact with the devil, the mountain's curse seeping into his soul. By 1890, Waltz's health faltered, the years of hardship etching deep lines into his face. Phoenix had grown, its streets buzzing with newcomers drawn by silver, strikes and tombstone. But the Dutchman remained a relic, a living enigma. He rarely spoke of his past, but fragments emerged. Tales of his German youth, the ocean crossing that nearly claimed him in a storm, the backbreaking labor that forged his resilience. The mine had become his obsession, a hidden world where he escaped the judgments of society. On his final treks, he'd sit by the entrance, gazing at the vein that snaked into darkness, wondering if it was worth the isolation. The gold mocked him, abundant yet untouchable, for to reveal it would invite chaos. Whispers in town grew bolder. "The old man sitting on a fortune. When he dies, it'll be fair game." Prospectors eyed his farm, plotting in hushed tones. Waltz sensed the noose, tightening, his immigrant wariness sharpening into paranoia. He began confiding snippets to Julia Thomas and her adopted son, Riney Petrash, perhaps sensing his end. The superstition's dangers were not mere folklore. They were visceral, a symphony of peril that tested the human spirit. Rattlesnakes coiled. In the shade, their fangs a swift end. Heatstroke felled the unprepared, bodies bloating under the sun. And the curse, rooted in Apache beliefs that the mountains housed spirits angered by greed, manifested in eerie ways. Hunters reported strange lights flickering at night, shadows that moved against the wind. One man, a former soldier named Jenkins claimed to have glimpsed the mine's entrance in 1888, only to be driven mad by visions of ghostly guardians. He returned to town babbling, "The Dutchman's gold is blood money," before hanging himself in despair. Waltz dismissed such tales, but deep down, they resonated. His own encounters, narrow escapes from landslides, the unnerving silence broken by unseen footsteps, fueled a raw fear that clawed at his resolve. Yet the emotional stakes soared. The gold represented not just wealth, but validation of his arduous journey from Europe to this wild frontier. As winter approached in 1891, a flood ravaged Phoenix, destroying homes and livelihoods. Waltz, weakened by pneumonia, lay bedridden in his modest shack. Julia nursed him, her presence a rare comfort. In fevered delirium, he murmured clues. Past Weaver's Needle, 3 red hills, the mines in the shadow. Riney scribbled notes, his young eyes wide with excitement. Waltz's voice grew faint, laced with regret. "I came for a new life, but the gold took it." He died on October 25, 1891 at 81, his body interred in a simple grave. No grand fortune was found in his possessions, only a few nuggets and ore samples. But his death unleashed a torrent. Julia and Riney, armed with his cryptic directions, set out immediately, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The mountains welcomed them with indifference, canyons swallowing their echoes. They searched for days, hacking through brush only to return empty-handed, frustration etching their faces. Word spread like wildfire. The Dutchman's mine was real, and now it was up for grabs. The chase began in earnest, a frenzy of hope and hubris that would claim countless lives. In the wake of Waltz's passing, the Superstition Mountains transformed into a magnet for the desperate and the daring. Prospectors flooded in from across the nation, maps hastily drawn from second-hand accounts clutched in trembling hands. The legend ballooned. Tales of Peralta stones, ancient markers etched with clues, surfaced, fueling wild expeditions. One early hunter, Dr. Abraham Thorne, a physician from New Mexico, ventured in 1892, guided by Apache informants who spoke of a rich vein guarded by thunder. He vanished for weeks, emerging gaunt and silent, claiming to have seen the gold but sworn to secrecy. His story only heightened the suspense, whispers racing through mining camps like sparks on dry tinder. The emotional depth of these pursuits was profound. Men like Thorne risked not just life, but legacy, driven by the immigrant. Dream Waltz embodied. Families back home waited in vain, letters unanswered as the mountains exacted their toll. The dangers were unrelenting, a dramatic tension that built with every step into the unknown. Flash floods roared through arroyos without warning, sweeping away camps and dreams alike. In 1896, a party led by the adventurous Julia Thomas herself, now obsessed with honoring Waltz's memory, faced a brutal ordeal. As they climbed a treacherous slope, a boulder dislodged, crushing one man's leg. Screams pierced the air, blood soaking the dust. Julia pressed on, her resolve steel, but the group turned back, haunted by the curse's shadow. "It's as if the earth itself fights us," she later confided to Riney, her voice trembling with raw emotion. Apache raids added peril, though diminished by reservations warriors still patrolled, viewing treasure seekers as desecrators. One infamous clash in 1900 saw a group of miners ambushed at dusk, arrows whistling through the twilight. Survivors fled, leaving behind the fallen, their bodies a grim warning etched into the rock. Human drama pulsed at the core, bonds forged and shattered in the crucible of greed. Brothers turned on each other, like the Peterson siblings in 1905, who discovered a promising outcrop only to quarrel over shares. One shot the other in a fit of rage, the echo reverberating through the canyons as the survivor fled, goldless and damned. Women too entered the fray, widows like Eliza Reed, who inherited a vague map from her prospector husband. In 1910, she braved the peaks, her skirts torn by thorns, driven by a mother's desperation to provide for her children. She never returned, her fate swallowed by the mists. These stories wove a tapestry of suspense, each failure amplifying the myth's allure. The curse, whispered in Apache lore as the wrath of the mountain gods, manifested in psychological torment. Hunters plagued by paranoia, convinced of unseen eyes watching. Yet the thrill persisted, the raw emotion of standing on the precipice, of fortune, the heart-pounding rush of uncovering a glint of ore. Waltz's ghost loomed large, his secrecy a taunt from beyond the grave, urging them deeper into the abyss. As the 20th century dawned, the legend evolved, drawing a new generation hardened by economic woes. The Great Depression amplified the desperation, with unemployed men flocking to Arizona, tools in hand and hope in their eyes. One such figure was James Kidd, a reclusive inventor who vanished in 1949 while searching, his estate later funding psychic investigations. A bizarre twist that underscored the enduring mystery. But earlier in the 1920s, the pursuits grew methodical, with organized parties employing dynamite and surveys. Yet the mountains resisted, their secrets buried under layers of deception. In 1931, Adolf Ruth, the man whose death opened this tale, arrived with a purported Peralta map, his optimism clashing with the harsh reality. He set up camp near Willow Spring, scribbling notes by lantern light. Days turned to weeks. Search. Parties found his decapitated body skull miles away, riddled with bullets. No gold, no map, only questions. The emotional stakes soared. Ruth's son, devastated, vowed vengeance, but the killer remained a phantom, perhaps a rival hunter or the curse incarnate. Suspense built in every expedition, the atmospheric dread palpable. Imagine the crackle of a campfire under a star-strewn sky, shadows leaping as men shared tales of Waltz's clues. He said it's where the sun sets on 3 peaks, one might whisper, only for dawn to reveal false leads. Dangers compounded. In 1932, a flash flood claimed 3 lives, bodies mangled beyond recognition. The raw emotion of survival, fear twisting into madness, drove some to extremes. Take the case of Jesse Capin in modern times, but rooted in the legend's pull. He disappeared in 2009, his remains found years later, a testament to the timeless hazard. Back in the 1800s aftermath, the human toll mounted, families fractured. One widow, Mary Ann, lost her husband to the mountains in 1895, then her son in 1902, both chasing the same elusive vein. The gold took them. She'd weep, her grief a raw wound that never healed. The curse's grip tightened, blending myth with tragedy. Apache elders spoke of it as a spiritual barrier, punishing greed with isolation or death. White hunters rationalized it as bad luck, but the pattern was undeniable. Over 100 souls lost since Waltz's era, from heat exhaustion to foul play. Yet the thrill endured, the badass hook of potential discovery, the dramatic tension of outwitting nature's fortress. Expeditions like the 1947 Don's Club trek, where enthusiasts combed the range, ended in frustration, but each failure fed the legend. Waltz's life as an immigrant, his solitary triumph over adversity resonated, inspiring those who saw in the mine a path to their own redemption. The mountains, with their whispering winds and hidden crevices, became a character unto themselves, a relentless antagonist in this saga of human folly. Waltz's deathbed clues, fragmented as they were, became the holy grail for seekers. Julia Thomas sold maps pieced from memory, her bakery a hub of intrigue until her own failed searches broke her spirit. Riney Petrash spent decades probing the canyons, his youth fading into obsession. In 1912, he confided to a friend, "I can feel it, close, but the mountains shift like they're alive." He died in 1953, the secret unclaimed. These pursuits highlighted the emotional depth, the raw ache of unfulfilled promise, the suspense of near misses. One hunter in 1920 unearthed a cache of ore matching Waltz's samples, only for a cave-in to bury it anew, leaving him shattered. The danger persisted, rattlesnake bites, falls from cliffs, each a dramatic punctuation in the narrative. The legend's whispers evolved, drawing figures like Barry Storm, who in the 1940s wrote books sensationalizing the curse, blending fact with flair. Yet historical accuracy anchored the tale. No confirmed mine, only tantalizing hints. Apache curses loomed, their cultural weight adding layers of tension. In 1960, a group ignored warnings, only to face a sudden storm that stranded them. 1. Man succumbing to exposure. The human drama peaked in personal stories. Fathers passing maps to sons, a chain of inheritance laced with tragedy. The superstition's atmosphere, sun-baked days yielding to chilling nights, amplified the immersion, every rustle a potential threat. As decades passed, technology intruded, helicopters, metal detectors, yet the mine eluded. The emotional stakes remained high, the thrill of the hunt, the despair of defeat. Waltz's immigrant journey, from German fields to Arizona's wilds, embodied the American dream's dark side. Fortune found, but at what cost? Today, the Superstition Mountains stand, sentinel, their secrets intact, a haunting reminder of the legend's grip. Modern seekers, armed with GPS and drones, venture in, but the curse endures. Disappearances like that of Jesse Kappan in 2009 echo the past. No mine has been found. The gold, perhaps a myth born of hope, or a real vein swallowed by time. Waltz's tale leaves us haunted, an immigrant's discovery shrouded in secrecy, birthing a legacy of peril and passion. The mountains whisper still, drawing the bold and the broken, their jagged embrace a eternal enigma. In the end, the true treasure is the mystery itself, unresolved, unbreakable, forever luring souls into the unknown.